Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It's the 13th of June, 2025, and this is part two, where we're briefly going to be talking about Israel and Iran, which is ironic, really, because when I got up at 3 o'clock this morning, um, Israel were in the process of attacking Iran. But we're going to put that to one side, or we're going to put that. Let's not talk about that because it's happening, and I haven't got enough information that I can sort of verify and to justify a video. And that's not what this video is about. It's important now at this stage that we get this information out there, because the news is, and it will continue to be plastering all over mainstream and all over, other platforms over the next few days about this attack. And everyone, will have something to say about it. Maybe how Israel are this and that, how the rest of the world will be, calling for calm, how, as per usual, Trump, 1 minute saying that they're not involved, and then saying we'll back Israel all the way. But we need to understand why this is happening, and all of this is popping off. And could very easily end up be a nuclear conflict. Guys, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to be running through some more boring slides, I'm afraid, during this session. There's no other way of presenting this. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to throw some slides out there, and that's kind of it. This is not going to be too long. I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. I just want to brush quickly on the Israel mass conflict in Gaza, because I've learned some things over the last few days that are important in, let's say, understanding some of what's happening. This is understanding and not justifying. Okay, don't get those two words mixed up. I'm understanding and not justifying what's happening. But what I'm doing is I'm understanding by looking at the bigger picture. I've always listened to some footage about how Hamas fighters on the 7th of October, they were wearing body cams to film everything that they were doing during that attack. These are body cams that are retrieved from the captured Hamas fighters. But I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go on any more about that. And I'll tell you for why, guys. I've been sort of listening to content, people that have seen these videos, and I just don't think I have the right to. I don't have the right to talk about that evil brutality and barbaric acts of torture and murder. I wasn't there, thankfully. I didn't witness any of it, and personally, it's just not my place to talk about that. And this is probably not the right place. It's way too sensitive. But before we pass comment and opinions on subjects, I've learned the importance in understanding what the fuck you're talking about before engaging your mouth. I have, without a doubt, had opinions on matters, only to find later on I was talking a load of rubbish, not intentionally, but because I hadn't sort of taken the time to fully understand things like history and reasons why, said wars and conflicts are and have taken place. Understanding without judgment both sides of each story. And this is the reason why I'm going to give you a quick rundown of Israel and Gaza first, because I had very limited sort of knowledge of the area, the history and things like that. And I think it's important, before you pass any opinion, it's important that you understand what has happened, and just a little bit of history. Listen, this is not a history lesson, guys. I'm just going to rattle through this as quickly as I can. So the Jewish people, they have a very long and continuous history in the region, tracing their roots back to the time of Abraham and the establishment of the Kingdom of Israel. The land has been a central focus of Jewish law and the identity for millennia. And Jerusalem has been at the heart of Jewish national and religious consciousness for over 3,000 years. Palestinian Arabs also have a deep-rooted history in the region, dating back for centuries or hundreds of years, and have lived in the area under various empires and rulers. The history of the region is marked by periods of both overlap and conflicts between the Jews or Jewish and Palestinian populations. The emergence of Zionism and the subsequent efforts to establish a Jewish state in Palestine led to significant changes in the population dynamics, and sort of that naturally sparked conflict. It has done for God knows how long, and it continues to do so today. The modern state of Israel, or the creation of the state of Israel in 1948, it was a pivotal moment. And while it realized, the dream of a Jewish homeland, it also displaced many Palestinian Arabs and led to ongoing tensions. Palestine, if you don't know, as a name, it's relative. It's a relatively modern term, and its origin is sort of debated. Some suggest it comes from the ancient Philistines, while others argue it's a more sort of general name used to describe the region. Now, it's not about who was there first, or is it? But nevertheless, you know, right now it doesn't matter. It's territory they and others have sort of fought over the last 2 or 3 thousand years. Just quickly, in 1516, the Ottoman Turks invaded the occupied Palestine, and that was an occupation that lasted for 402 years, except for a 9-year period between 1831 and 1840, when the Egyptian governor, Muhammad Ali, believe it or not, sent his troops to capture Palestine under the command of his son, Ibrahim Pasha. The Ottoman occupation of Palestine ended by the end of World War One, after the Ottoman Empire, along with the other Central Powers, lost the war to those allies. In 1917, the British forces entered Palestine, and by 1918, a year later, the Ottoman rule over Palestine was ended following the defeat of its forces at the Battle of Megiddo, which was in September 1918. So the area of the modern day Israel and Palestinian territories has a complex history, and it's not accurately described as either solely Jewish or solely Palestinian. Hence the reason why you're seeing the conflict. Both groups have ancient and significant ties to the land, with the Jewish people having a long and sort of storied presence dating back thousands of years, while Palestinian Arabs have also established a presence in the region for centuries. Now, I say centuries and thousands. Does it mean whoever was there first, it's theirs? Does that give them the right to do what they're doing? This is going to be an argument that's probably been sort of argued for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, between lots of different people. Well, I was here first, so it's mine or it's ours, that kind of thing. Anyway, Gaza and Hamas. During the Six-Day War, Hamas, the Islamic radicals that govern the country around the Israel state, told the Jews publicly, we're taking your wives when we win this war. Your wives and your daughters are our slaves. It's called Islamic halal, meaning that we can have your wives as slaves. But again, there's quite a bit of text around this subject in scripture, and that's going to be a video in itself. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, because it's not what we're talking about. But I'm raising it for a reason. Hamas, or the Hamas sort of charter. Okay, so the charter is like a manifesto, but the Hamas charter is a genocide blueprint. Hamas's sort of 1988 bounding charter, which is called for the annihilation. I think it's the annihilation. It's called for the annihilation. Hamas is right. Basically, Hamas is like the Labour Party. Let's put it that way. They're both as bad as each other. And Hamas's political manifesto that got them elected by a majority of Gazans states in Article 2, I think, the final day of judgment doesn't come until every Jew is dead. So this is Hamas, who is governing Gaza, in their manifesto states this under Article 2. The final day of judgment doesn't come until every Jew is dead. It doesn't say, it doesn't sort of say or state Zionist, it states Jews. And the non-majority of voters in Gaza, which I think was 1%, voted for Fatah, which is also deemed another terrorist group. Now, Hamas over the last 18 years have been able to heavily portray and influence the Palestinians in Gaza. which is a concentration or concentrated area of 2.1 million people, governed by Hamas law, being able to brainwash, radicalize, and or sort of educate the Palestinians in Gaza to simply hate the Israelis, so much so they should dictate their lives to killing the Israeli populations. Now, when I say that, you might be thinking, well, that's not true. It's this, it's that. Right, listen, just listen to what I'm going to say. It's kind of written in their law as a mission statement. Okay. This is not me saying it or making it up. If you want to go and have a look, just have a look at Hamas's manifesto. It's a mission statement that they've written themselves, which is part of their law. Okay, it's going to be their teaching. That's what they're going to tell people. Okay, those 2.1 million people. Okay, and all of that is in the name of God. Then my question is, how do you combat that? Many might agree with this approach. And listen, guys, there's going to be pros and cons. There's going to be fors and against opinions for all of this. I'm not going to get into this. I'm just telling you some facts, and I'm going to justify what I'm saying as I go on. So with Hamas, heavily influence. Um, well, it had a heavily influence with 99% of the 2.1 million Palestinian voting for Hamas led party, on top of the radical teachings to the children in Gaza. One can only assume that all Palestinians in Gaza are a potential threat to the Jews. Now, you might be saying, well, you can't tarnish them all with the same brush. I'm not tarnishing anyone with any brush. Basically, what I'm saying is that there's a governing party there. Their law is to portray certain mission statements that us in the Western world will not be able to get our heads around. But like I say, some of you might already be disagreeing, and that's fine because although what I've said is true, it isn't right. You have to feel sorry for the people of Gaza, regardless, because Gaza, when you look at it, looks like if you're from the UK, you might be familiar with HMP North Sea Camp or HMP Lie Hill or HMP Ford. They're all open category D, yeah, category D prisons here in the UK. Gaza is like a category D prison housing 2.1 million Palestinians. And instead of a prison service governing the inmates, they have a militant terrorist group governing the population there. That situation in itself should never have happened. And if, because I'm sure it does, who do you finger point at? Are the Israelis to blame for rounding up the Palestinians, isolating them, and in effect breeding this evil of hatred upon themselves? Listen, guys, I'll remain on the fence, and I want to be very careful with this information because it is sensitive, and I'm not here to judge, but still blame the governments. That's the governments around the world. They're normally responsible for anything that goes on. We hear of the Israeli raids on homes in Gaza back in 2014. They reference school books explicitly teaching the death of Jews. In video footage in class, teachers are asking children, what does two dead Jews plus two dead Jews equal? So teaching children this ideology is a form of brainwashing and radicalizing. Okay, that goes without saying. That's not their fault. That's just what they're being taught. If a child is taught this, then that's it. And it is ultimately labelled each and every Gazan, a Palestinian, a direct threat to Israel. But who's to blame for that? But listen, yeah, I don't want to get into the details as this is just an overview, and I just wanted to not justify because there's no justification for killing and slaughtering sort of innocent people and children on both sides. That is, the Jews, on the other hand, will see 99% of the Palestinians that have voted for Hamas over the years have been well, they've been taught to hate and kill Jews, will see these people as a direct threat in the past, now, and also in the future. Everyone in Gaza has been tarnished with the same brush, thanks to Hamas. But have Hamas spawned by, I don't know, an Israeli-controlled narrative? Yeah, those Palestinians didn't choose to be isolated in Gaza. Okay, they were put there and they were fenced off, and that was it. So whose fault is that? That's got to be Israel's fault. However, why did they do that? Well, because, we're not liked. I mean, let's be real about this. I mean, Israel's there and it's surrounded by seven Islamic State countries. Okay, they're going to be they're going to be the black sheep. They're going to be kind of, the neighbors are going to think, what the hell are you doing? This is not even your place. Anyway, let's not get into that. Let's go. Right. You have to be able to sit on the fence and see sort of both sides of the argument. This is a little more than an argument between the two sides, guys, but you get my drift. The Palestinians have been persecuted for hundreds of years, and my guess is it's payback. But putting all that aside, whether we like it or not, we have to look at the real picture here. There's Christianity on one side and Islam on the other. Although there's similarities in scripture, their practices are they're very different, and yet again, inevitably causes conflict over over religion. I'm not religious, but I believe in God, and that's allowed. God, in my eyes, is not a man, it's not a woman, an animal, or anything seen in the physical form on this 1D basic plane that we live in here on Earth. God is a creator, but a power, an almighty energy spanning many different dimensions. And we on Earth will never know whether or not there is a God or not until the day we draw our last breath. But these people and millions of them around the world, they've chosen to live their lives by the word of God. There's nothing wrong with that. Millions out there won't have, well, they just won't have it any other way. Um, and that's going to be based on their beliefs. And there's going to be millions of others that will sacrifice and die for their God. That's the God that they worship. So the gods, that they are reading about in these books that completely differ from the original versions. So when I say books, it could be the Quran, the Bible, whatever religious books we're talking about. Because remember that this is what this is what religion does. It's creating a way of life. But nevertheless, religion is a different subject to discuss because in itself, it's a belief, and no one can outright prove their points and opinions, meaning neither you nor I, nor a single person from the world's 8.062 billion population can prove that there is a God. They can't prove what or who God is, but instead believe in the God based on purely scripture. No one on the face of this planet today can prove who wrote those events and writings within any of those religious scripts. We cannot verify any of what's written. And do you know why that is? Because we're not supposed to be able to. We as humans are not categorically supposed to know that there is life after death. And why? Can you imagine if we knew that there was life after this on Earth? Can you imagine if we thought that the other side was this loving, pain-free, caring place, and is perfect in any sort of sense of the word? If we knew that this place was there, then many people would simply commit suicide, and off they go to this wonderland. Can you imagine if we actually knew that if we do anything wrong, we can simply repent and everything will be fine for you in this wonderland? If that is the case, then people would be going out there committing all kinds of shitty things in the knowing that everything's going to be okay anyway. We as human beings are not supposed to know categorically whether or not there is a God. We're not categorically supposed to know that there is a 1 million% chance that there is life after death. Because if we did, then the world would, truly, it'd be like hell on earth. Religion is there also to kind of govern the masses, to try and keep people in check and apply law, order, and to teach people to be nice to one another. Some religions have evolved, certainly changed since the first books were written. And many new so-called religions have surfaced. Just to put that into perspective, there are currently 4,200 to 10,000 religions. However, a majority of the world's population, over 77%, follows one of the four major religions. That's going to be Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Anyway, let's move on sort of quickly because it's a subject I know little about. I'm not religious, although I believe in God, and that's enough for me. Okay. So, this is how I see it. Sorry, excuse me. When World War III potentially spawns in the Middle East, if it does, most of you will be referring to the 7th of October attacks on Israel by Hamas and or the brutal retaliation of Israel to the slaughtering of the 1,200 Israelis. But before I continue, one has to understand this also. Not all Israelis are Jews. Israelis are citizens of Israel. And the term Jewish refers to someone who is affiliated with the religion Judaism. There are nearly 2 million Muslims also living in Israel, which has been growing year by year. However, Gaza is part of Israel, or so we're led to believe, with a population of 2.1 million. And one also has to consider this. Out of the 2.1 million Gazan Palestinians in the Gazan Strip, 99% of them are Muslim. So when they say there are 2 million Muslims in Israel, are they referring to Gaza? And if not, then the number of Muslims in Israel should be around about 4 million. Neither here nor there, but just want to put those numbers out there first. The reason why this is important is because the war about to light up in the Middle East is over religion. Looking at sort of the history, this is where it's all stemming from. No one's going to say that, but this is what's happening. And with that comes the fight over territory, holy and sacred lands, and as I've mentioned before, most wars through the whole of history have been fought over religion and or territory, and this one's no different. Since the 7th of October, or the attack in Israel by Hamas. There's been protests over protests, conflicts of interest across the world, within governments and the little people, on the street in the pub. But the reason for this video isn't because I'm religious, whether I think the war in Gaza is right or wrong. It's not because of political or populist opinion. It's because I'm interested in whether or not any of these conflicts are going to be affecting me and my family. This is a prepping channel, guys, and that is the only reason why we sometimes need to sort of delve into the details of conflicts to firstly understand what is happening. But more importantly, are these conflicts going to turn into any kind of world war and turn my world upside down? Is the Middle Eastern conflict a region synchronizing at the moment, along with the other regions, into the realm of World War III? That's the question. Okay. Most people don't believe that that's happening, but that's fine. What do I know? That might sound selfish, that the only reason I'm doing this is so I can prepare myself, but it's a prepping channel, guys. It's not a history channel. It's not I don't know. There's channels out there. Anyway, I'm not going to let's forget about that. I'm not even going to go there. But you might be thinking, well, that's a bit selfish or whatever. Either way, I'm just telling you why I'm doing this video and why the channel's there. And I believe that there are 4.5 regions synchronizing as we speak. That's Russia and Europe with NATO. The Middle East, that being the US, using Israel as a proxy to disarm Iran. Okay, that's happening. Right, what's happened this morning is happening. Okay, that's going to go off until the West is happy that Iran no longer have the capability of enriching nuclear material to create nuclear weapons. Okay, it doesn't matter what anyone else is saying or how it goes or whatever it is. You cannot have a terrorist state in possession of nuclear weapons. Period. Okay, that's it. We then have China, Taiwan, which inevitably will pull in other countries within the region, no doubt, orchestrated by the US. And then we have North Korea, because quite frankly, the East and the West World War will be exactly that. And the point 5 refers to the US homeland. I'm calling it point 0.5 because they're going to be kind of battling with each other. I believe that the US is going to implode, meaning, the civilian population would turn against each other, whether that be through a civil war, whether there's a terrorist attack on the homeland, forcing ethnicity to turn against each other, or there is a hybrid warfare attack on the country in the form of cyber attack, sabotage, and/or the possible assassination of the president. Those are the 4.5 components of a world war that seem to be right now, sort of kind of bubbling up. We have to understand the bigger picture, guys, in what's happening across the globe to better understand and plan. Remember, this is prepping, okay, and we need to plan. We need to know what we're planning for. Remember this, during the Biden administration, 9.7, sorry, immigrants, no, 9.7 million immigrants crossed the southern border into the US. I've seen videos of immigrants, getting through those fences, throwing their passports into the bushes, and simply walking up to border control, where they start their process into US citizenship. Now, I know Trump is trying to revert all of that, but look at the hassle it's causing. Millions of those immigrants will be enemies to the United States. There were thousands of people buying flight tickets for a holiday into South America from China and other Asian countries with no intention of going back, making their way to the border, and off they went. If for 1 minute anyone thinks that many of those immigrants weren't there as spies or terrorists, then you kind of need to wake up. If you're the enemy and you're aware of this loophole into the United States of America, you're going to exploit it. And it has been exploited, and it's going to be to the US's detriment. The same happened here in the UK, and around the world with illegal border crossings, and that is war. I started all of this off, this interest in the war that could affect me back on the 24th of February 2022, the Ukraine war. And that's all I was interested in because, of course, if you're living in the UK, Ukraine is only 1,300 miles away, and it will only take me 21 hours to drive there. So it's, in effect, it's on our doorstep. And you'd be an idiot not to be sort of taking note of that. And since then, over the last 3 years, we've seen the attack on Israel and the spotlight move directly over Iran, which in itself can ignite all sorts of conflicts within the region. And on top of the current conflicts and turbulence, in those areas that's currently, that's currently unfolding. Over the last 6 months, there's been a stronger focus on China and Taiwan and America's involvement seen, just with its enforcements of high tariffs in the hope to, I suppose, destabilize the Chinese economy. North Korea, in my view, are the clowns of the circus, I'm going to call them, with a landmass no bigger than Ireland here in the UK. And that's no disrespect to our Irish neighbours, but quite frankly, North Korea will be flattened quickly. However, Kim has chosen to join the Eastern Alliance, and quite rightly so, because we don't have to go back far and remember the Korean War with the Americans' influence in South Korea. Is it? Yeah, yeah. The Americans influenced South Korea, and the Chinese and Russians influenced North Korea. Yet another small country being used as proxies by the superpowers. See, guys, can you see the patterns here? That what's happening today is nothing new. It's new to you and I. Because none of this has kind of happened in our lifetimes, basically. If you're lucky enough to even live 100 years, that is still, in terms of time, is just a blip on the map. A nothing burger, as the Americans would put it. We've all been sort of, fortunate enough to not have gone through any horrific experiences of war, but unfortunate enough to now potentially witness the effects of a world war. This is not new, ladies and gents. We have already had two world wars in the last 110 years, and as mentioned before, there will be a fourth, fifth, and sixth world war over the next 200 to 300 years. And why? Because there's always been wars since the beginning of time, and unfortunately, they're definitely not going to be stopping now for the likes of you and I. So, going back to the purpose of this video, whilst everyone's out there talking about Trump and Musk falling out, how it's all kicking off in LA, how the economies, the cost of living, recessions, and Bank collapses are unfolding and causing, everyone financial distress. And I'm one of those people. How everyone's having a good old laugh about some old shit on Insta, slating somebody off on Facebook, having a dance around on TikTok, or simply listening to other pointless bullshit on X. There are still 85% of the population's completely forgetting or, choosing to ignore what's really important here. Things that can seriously turn, your worlds into, I was going to swear there, sorry, into dog shit. There's a reason why I'm doing this video today and not tomorrow, nor next week. And that's because, just quickly, I'm finishing off, guys. I had a dream last night, quite a vivid one, as a family member, as a family of five. We were on holiday and we were on our way back. So we were sat in the airport waiting to come back when all flights at the airport were grounded. Grounded because there'd been a nuclear strike somewhere. I couldn't tell where we were, nor where the strike had happened in that dream. But remember vividly thinking about being completely out of my comfort zone in an airport in a different country, and all that we'd sort of prepared for had gone completely out the window because we hadn't, we hadn't planned for this happening whilst we were on holiday. I remember thinking about our iodine tablets for my missus and kids. And that was the only thing I could remember. That's all I wanted in the dream. I just wanted those tablets. Everything else seemed irrelevant under the circumstances in that sort of particular situation. I remember simply just feeling absolutely helpless, and that was it. It was a short dream, or I only remember, a part of a longer dream. But of course, in that situation, your survival instincts kick in. We are asking ourselves, firstly, two questions: no matter where in the world you are, or even where you live, but no matter where you are in the world, where was the strike and what type in terms of air or ground burst? But also the estimated yield of the strike or strikes. So from that, we quickly decide whether or not we're in a safe place, and if not, how much time do we have to sort of get into that safe place? Anyway, guys, we could go on about this, for ages, ifs, buts, and maybes. But my point is, I've started dreaming about this. Is that because I'm consumed by information overload? If so, that may not be a good sign either, because certainly in this country, that's the UK, the government have turned up the drip feeding tap. And we're hearing a lot more about World War III being, sort of being prepared militarily, shall we say, the defense spending. And anyway, the list goes on. Forget about that. Guys, I've taken up too much of your time. I've been yapping on, rabbiting on. I'm going to close it there. Get yourselves prepared, guys. Get your minds, your bodies, and your souls on point. None of this means that you have to stop everything and stop looking forward to life. Get on with your lives as normal. Enjoy everything you do. Value and appreciate everything you've been taking for granted. Spend more time with your friends and family, but just keep in mind that if the shit hits the fan on your watch, just make sure that you're prepared and ready for it. And until next time.